All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first live streaming, live from quarantine, live from self quarantine, carded tarot tales. I couldn't be more excited about the show tonight, and I have three very talented storytellers with me to inaugurate this event. And I'm just going to explain a little bit about the show up top. It's Tarot Tales is a show that combines storytelling and the tarot. I love the archetypal imagery of the tarot, and the images are so evocative and so I find across centuries relevant to our own times, as well as the times they originated in. And I think it's cool that there's sort of a piece of history that can speak to us that way. And I like the power to spark our imagination, and so I think it's a perfect pairing. And tonight I'm going to be using the Arnaud Amfo 1801 Marseille deck, and it's one of my favorites. It's exceptionally beautiful, and it dates from the French Revolution. They were actually using the revolutionary calendar at the time. There's a card in it that's dated year 10 because they during the French Revolution, they threw out the calendar. They were going to redo the calendar, and they restarted time. And so this came from the 10th year of the Revolution, which pegs it as 1801, and it's an exceptionally pretty deck. And so I'm thrilled to be sharing it with you guys tonight, and exploring it more as we go on, and we start pairing cards with it from it with our storytellers. And I'm really excited. This is a woman I haven't met before personally, but I shared with a friend she was being on the show, and she goes, "Oh, I know her. I'm excited." So I'm very excited to bring up our next storyteller, Eliza Shin. And bear with me a moment while I manipulate the controls to make that happen. So you're going to see me pivot to the side temporarily, and then we'll hear from Eliza with her wonderful story.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and thank you so much, Ryan, for putting this together. So my story, for about 18 months, when I was 3 to 5, right after my mother passed, my dad and I were best buds. He bought me all the mushroom pizzas that I wanted, and when we took trips to the zoo, he would just scoop me up in his arms, and we would just walk around. And I would ask him obscure questions at that age, like, "Dad, what does insurance mean?" And then when I was 5, he remarried and they had a son. Things at the house got kind of tense. And my Korean dad turned into one of those irritable, old world fathers who had a really short fuse. For example, when I didn't get into Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, or Yale, my dad complained, "Ugh, I don't have anything to talk to my friends about." So at that point, I realized, okay, if I can't make my dad proud, don't make him mad. Which is why I was a little bit nervous about going on a family reunion trip when we had gone to Korea once. I was on a trip with my father and stepmother, and I was going now as an adult. I'd been probably about 4 times, and this was the first time I was a grown adult and I had a job. And to mark this occasion, we decided to have a makeshift family reunion at my dad's rural country home. Um, my dad has a little bit of a beef with his country siblings, so I knew that in order for this reunion to be successful, I needed to not slip up and not have any blunders. This meant that upon meeting my 4 aunties, I had to mentally rank them in birth order, and then I had to quickly match them up with their respective husbands, 1 through 4, use the proper honorifics in every single sentence, don't use any English whatsoever because that is rude, and then just don't embarrass my dad. Well, with my aunties, this wasn't so bad. They didn't intimidate me so much because I'd met some of them before. But with my uncles, well, these were countrymen who, like my father, had been raised at a time of outhouses, shamans, and free roaming chickens. They were not at all like the college educated city folk on my maternal side. So anyway, upon meeting me, my relatives were so excited that I even spoke Korean. They had expected this typical second generation American niece who would just smile and be mute through all of dinner. But I'm able to keep up. And then I helped my aunties with preparations for dinner. And that was great because it was all straightforward kitchen chit chat. Well, dinner at this traditional country house meant that we were in the main room and that my uncles were off to one side of the room at their low table and my aunties were at their side of the room at their low table. And after dinner, it is time to drink. So everything is cleared and the men gather in the center of the room. And the women do what they're supposed to do, which is they take their seats against the wall because every wife needs to keep eyes on her husband in order to guide and counsel him as his sobriety slowly fades through the night. Well, it was time to drink. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to take my place by the wall. And so I went to go sit next to my auntie number one when Big Uncle, auntie number one's husband, I'll call him Big Uncle, waved me towards him. And I was like, no. I know how this works. I need to go sit with the women next to the wall. And then he waves me over again. And I'm thinking, is this a test? I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to go sit next to the wall. Then the third time, he says, "Illu wa," which in Korean means, come here. And I remember, oh yeah, that's right. I sit wherever a Korean male elder wants me to sit. So I go to the center of the room, and I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know this guy's triggers, and this conversation could be a landmine. So I sit down, and he's like, "시카고의 날씨가 어때? What's the weather like in Chicago?" And then he asks me other questions in Korean, like, how often do you see your parents? He was purposefully keeping his Korean really easy and basic to help me out. This was a nice guy. I relaxed, the whole room relaxed. And after a bit, it felt like, okay, it's time to bring out my gifts for my aunties. Now, my stepmother had helped me with my gifts for my aunties because I had been like, what should I bring? She's like, it doesn't matter what you bring, just don't bring nothing. So I got out my gifts and my aunties opened their boxes and there were these cool, snazzy towels, kitchen towels, and these snazzy dishwashing gloves. And they murmured their thanks, and I looked at my stepmother, and she is horrified that I've purchased kitchen household gifts. And quickly needing to distance herself from my blunder, she says, "Why did you bring those? They can buy those in Korea." Oh, I'm getting nervous, and I look to my dad. He doesn't care. This is a woman's matter. All the meanwhile, Big Uncle is waving me back over because he's having so much fun with his American niece. So I go back over, and he banters and jokes with me, and I've noticed that next to him is this bottle of Crown Royal, and he never lets it stray very far from him or for very long. So I remark, "I think that Crown Royal is your favorite." And he says to me, "Next time you come through duty free, you can pick me up a bottle of Crown Royal." Okay. Well, finally the night had to come to an end. And my relatives are like, "You should come to Korea more often." I was like, okay. They said, "Don't wait for your parents to come, just come on your own." I was like, okay. And then Big Uncle, waving at those kitchen gifts to the side, he says to me, "Don't bring gifts." So I look at him and I'm like, okay. So don't bring Crown Royal? This mouth just spits stuff out. I'd forgotten that I'm not in America. My dad is sitting right there. He's surrounded by all of his siblings. And I look at Big Uncle, and he looks at me, and he laughs. The room erupts in laughter. She makes jokes. She brings gifts. What a niece. What a night. Later, as I'm filing into the hotel with my parents, I feel this pressure on my shoulder and I turn, and my dad has this faint smile on his face. But what really catches my eye is that his body is just vibrating with pride. He had looked so good in front of his country relatives. He looked like the perfect father. And I always imagined that if I ever made my dad proud, we'd have one more moment as best buds. But here it was. We couldn't look each other in the eye. We didn't know what to say. He certainly wasn't going to scoop me up in his arms. But instead, in order to mark the occasion, he had taken the tip of his index finger and he had reached forward and placed it on my shoulder. And I thought to myself, okay, I know what this means. Take a snapshot, because it's never going to get any better than this. Thanks, everybody. I
Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. Eliza, for sharing that with us. That was a very touching tale. I had to think for a moment. Uh, Hold on. Amateur. Uh, I have to come in. I'm new at telling I'm not new to hosting shows, but I'm new to hosting shows and manipulating electronic equipment at the same time. But we're gonna get through this just fine. Thank you so much, Eliza. That was wonderful. And now I've got the feedback gone. There was a lot to think about during your show and a lot of different elements to pair with a card for you. And I went back and forth, but ultimately the card I chose for your reading is. I thought there was a lot about balance, and it's the Two of Swords, and the Two of Swords is sort of really trying to juggle, like not even juggle. It's really trying to stay between two boundaries, and I like the impression of like. I'm not in America. Like this is Korean culture, and sort of being caught in between. And there's an element with the Two of Swords where it's it's like um, it's temporary, like it's a balance that's gonna break one way or the other, and it was like it was kind of delicious the moment where it broke in your story, where it was like, oh, this is gonna work out, like things are going my way, and so I felt a really good I don't know. I feel like it really fits, and I'm really happy with the direction it took, and I'm so grateful that you participated in this and shared that with us. And coming up next to reveal our next card for us is MJ King, another storyteller I'm excited to have on, and she will be with you momentarily.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me. And Eliza, that was a beautiful story. It reminded me of when I went to Korea for the first time when I was 19 years old and I met my grandfather, and he told me that I turned out okay, and that embedded inside me for that I held on to it for a long time. So my story's a little different. I'll start. I looked at them, the 5 full watermelons inside the shopping cart, as I stood outside the supermarket. How was I going to carry 5 whole watermelons by myself without a car and with a shopping cart that automatically locked its wheels if taken a few feet away from the store? I looked to the park I would have to walk through carrying 5 watermelons. I tried to visualize myself doing this successfully, and it was hard. It was so hard to see me succeeding in this endeavor. So I did what I always do in situations that seem hopeless. I told myself, You can do it. You are fully capable and incredibly strong. You've been known to do magical things when you put your mind to it, so you will carry those 5 whole watermelons you've just purchased from No Frills Supermarket. You will walk through Dufferin Grove Park in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where you were raised, and walk those additional 3 blocks to your apartment all by yourself. You don't need anyone. You can do anything alone. Life has prepared you for this. You know you cannot count on anyone, and no way are you going to return any of them, get a refund, and admit defeat. You're Korean. You persevere. Those watermelons were $2 each. Never are you going to find watermelon for that price again. So you will carry 2 watermelons on each arm and 1 on your back. You make the impossible possible. I love watermelon. I love watermelon so much that I know how to say the word watermelon in multiple languages. Sandia, Pasiak, Ativak, Subak, watermelon. My husband loves watermelon too, but he's a minimalist. He calls himself a realist. When this happened, I had a small studio apartment on College Street in Toronto, Canada, a country known for its polite, civically minded, and sensible people. I was born in Seoul, Korea, a country known for its spicy food. This little studio apartment featured the sounds of streetcars grinding against the metal rails every 15 minutes as they made a turn. I paid less than $450 a month in downtown Toronto. I had a great deal. It was worth the noise I quickly got used to. Near this apartment was a No Frills Supermarket, and every week on Tuesday, it released their flyer of sales. I waited for this flyer in the months of June and July because it's during those months when watermelon is at its sweetest and freshest. I don't recommend buying watermelon any other months. Even if the watermelon is imported from the same place throughout the year, notably Chile, it is very important to wait until June and July to taste the best of the best. When I told my husband I need to go to the grocery store the next day of the flyer being released when the sales start, I didn't tell him that featured predominantly on the front page was a picture of whole watermelons with seeds, not seedless watermelons, but with seeds, the way nature made them. I love spitting out seeds. It's very satisfying. And they were only $2 each. Never have I ever seen such a sale for whole seeded watermelon. Normally they were at least $5 or more. My husband, he hates supermarkets. I don't know why. I love knowing there's a store full of food you can buy, and at No Frills, you buy them at a discount. They even featured a store brand called President's Choice, which are high-end in my opinion. He begrudgingly agreed to come with me, and I needed him to carry at least 2 of the 5 watermelons I plan on buying. I carried an empty large backpack, so I would carry 3, 1 in each arm and a third on my back. When he agreed to go No Frills, I felt nothing could go wrong with my plan. Oh, when I saw the huge box filled with watermelons in the produce section at No Frills, I was so happy. I grabbed a shopping cart. My husband immediately knew something was up because he shopped with a big cart. He said to me, "I hope we're only getting 1." I smiled at him as I carefully picked out a watermelon that felt a good weight for its size. I tapped it to hear the perfect thump, the sound similar to a drum. It means the watermelon flesh hasn't gotten gushy and old. I turned over the watermelon to make sure it had been kissed multiple times by bees by seeing the thin brown marks. It would ensure its sweetness, and then I put it in the cart. He didn't balk when I placed the first one in the cart. He looked uncomfortable when I placed the second one in the cart. When I placed the third one in the cart, he said, "That better not be coming home with us." And when I found the 4th one, he walked away. I quickly placed the 5th beautiful and final watermelon in the shopping cart and waited in line to check out. That's when he reappeared and said, no way are we getting 5 watermelons." I said, "I'm getting 5 watermelons, not you." The others in line ignored us. They didn't care how many watermelons we were buying. So he walked away again, and that's when I found myself outside the store, trying to figure out how I would take them all home with me by myself. I often thought the best thing in life would be for me to live in the woods alone, so I could never count on anyone. I would just count on myself. I knew I could get myself out of any predicament, no one else, just me. I had this proven to me time and time again over the years when I've been growing up. and I knew that I can do anything alone. I can only count on myself because otherwise they would disappoint me. And I have myself, just myself. And then I saw him coming from the side. He came and took 2 watermelons in his hands and demanded I place another one on top. So he would carry 3, and I carried 2 home. I smiled to him as we walked through Dauphin Grove Park. I even tried to hug him, but that proved kind of difficult. He came through, even when I didn't think he would, even when he didn't want to. He came through. He came through for me. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, MJ. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was a beautiful story. I was almost tempted to just give you the 5 of coins because they're round and there were 5 of them, and I thought that was funny. But I feel like that's much more of an emotional story, and I feel like that puts us in the realm of the cups. And I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of self-assuredness in that, and it's also moving in uh, there's progress in the relationship there, and so I like that with the movement in the field of emotions. I'm picking the 3 of Cups for you, and the Marseille definition of the 3 of Cups is a little bit different than the Rider-Waite Smith. Like if you're used to the Rider-Waite, it's more of a celebratory tone, but I think this is more of forward movement in the realm of emotion. And boy, like I like watermelons too, but I don't think as much as you do. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was a wonderful story. And coming up next to share a story with us is Susie May, who I met Susie through storytelling. She's part of a wonderful show during more ordinary times called Cursed at her store, A Love Bazaar. And I met her through that storytelling show and then got to know her and become friends with her. And also, if you're tuning into this show, I'm assuming you're into tarot, and her store is a great place to pick up a deck, so I highly recommend that. But tonight she's here to share a story with us, and coming up next is Susie May.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Ryan, and to Eliza and MJ for those beautiful stories. Tonight, I am going to be telling a story that goes back a long, long time ago to my 20s. In my 20s, I spent half of my time in Chicago, and I spent half of my time in Portland, Oregon. So the later half of those 20s in Portland, Oregon is where I'm going to focus on. So at that time, I played music. I still play music, but I really played music. I was the lead guitarist in a band called Bitch Wizard, and I have their tape, my tape, right here. It was a metal band. It consisted of 3 individuals, which I will show to you here. We have me, we have Jeffrey, and we have John. So this was our band, and when you play music with people, you form a family. You form a relationship that goes beyond words into this ethereal kind of magical space. And so Jeffrey and John were very, very close to me, and we formed this fairly tight connection through music. One of the things we needed as a band, we were borrowing a drum set. And that doesn't work. I grew up in Las Vegas, and when I lived in Las Vegas, not only do I play guitar, but I also play drums. And I had a drum set in Las Vegas. So we devised a plan as the band Bitch Wizard to go to Las Vegas and pick up not only my drum set, but my motorcycle that my dad had left me when he passed away. Uh, so total rock and roll trip, right? I as we were going from Oregon through California to Nevada. We wanted to hit San Francisco. We wanted to hit LA. I mean, this was fun. But if you have ever taken that trip from Oregon down south, you know that the terrain is mountainous. It is steep. It is dangerous. And the car that we were riding in, here's another little multimedia moment for you, was this Econoline van. This is Jeff and John in the Econoline van, on top of it, shall I say. And you know those things are big. They are heavy. They are crazy. And it was a stick shift. This becomes important later on. So we're on our way to San Francisco. We had eaten this like amazing falafel pizza. We're having a good time. We're blasting the Cows, if you know that punk rock band. They're very abrasive, just super in your face. Blasting the Cows, having a good time, barreling south. And Jeffrey starts to feel kind of ill. He had a lot of health issues. In fact, I want to dedicate this story to Jeffrey tonight because he's no longer with us on this earthly plane. He passed away last year. So he had diabetes, and he started feeling like he needed his insulin. So I was in the back of the van. I started rummaging through the van. John was looking through the glove box up on the dash, and this was something that we had always gotten on him about. Like, Jeffrey, you have to keep your insulin like cool. You can't leave it on the dashboard in the sunlight. Like, you can't leave it willy-nilly like underneath the guitar case. And we couldn't find it. We could not find his insulin anywhere, and he like started to look really bad. John is like Jeffrey was a through and through Portlander. Like, yeah, that's cool, man. Like, I'll catch you on the flip side. Like, flaking out is a legitimate reason to not show up. But he was a sweet guy. Like, he was in a bunch of Dandy Warhol's videos. Like, just good-natured individual. John is from New York. He was like, hey, I'm from New York. Like, I haven't had a driver's license for like 20 years. There's no way I'm driving this van. Like, fuck you. Get out of here. And I was just this innocent young ingenue. And said, how hard could it be? I'll drive stick down this mountain. Now, another thing to know about this evening is that it was dark. We did not have sunlight. It was foggy. You could see as far as the headlights, the high beams could shine. It's steep. It's downhill. I did not know how to downshift. I did not know how to prepare myself when you're braking. Like, all I knew was go and stop. I just knew like automatic transmission. But it was the time. We had a need. I was going to step up to the plate and do it. So we pulled over really quick. There's no shoulder really on this crazy, like, mountain pass. And we made the trade. So I'm driving the car. Jeff and John tell me, here's how you shift and, push in the clutch and push in the brake and turn the ignition and get it started. And here's how you shift. And Jeffrey was showing me the shifting, first gear, second gear, third gear. And I did it. I drove. I drove through the mountain pass in extreme fog with the Cows blaring. Super abrasive music. Jeffrey in the side, John in the back, just gripping the wheel and focusing. I knew it was on me. I knew I had to get us there. And we ended up in San Francisco safe and sound. So as I was practicing this story earlier, I realized how much of a parallel it is to the times we're living in now. We're live streaming shows that should be happening in person. We're dealing with a situation that we've never dealt with before, individually or as a group. And in times like this, it's important to just grip that wheel and have heart and keep driving. We can see as far as our headlights will take us, and that's enough for now. So with that, that was a little bit of Bitch Wizard for you. But that was my story. Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on the show. And I hope to see you all in the real world sometime eventually.
Oh my gosh, Susie, again with the feedback. I'm sorry, Susie. That was amazing. I love that. Bitch Wizard might be like I played that game with my friend. Like, oh, this would be a fun band name. That would be a fun. Bitch Wizard is like my favorite band name I think that I may have ever heard. And I was going through a few different cards, thinking of your story. There was a little bit about it that made me think of the world and sort of jumping into manifestation, like making things happen, like. And then for a little while, I was thinking the Wheel of Fortune. But ultimately, what I settled on was the Chariot because, like your conclusion, like you just got to take the wheel, and like a big theme of the Chariot is like you can catch the chariot, or you can stand in its way and let it run you down, or you can take control, you can harness it, you can use that energy. And one of the more I've been through some stressful things in my life, and one of the more stressful things I've ever done was being coached on how to drive stick by someone who wasn't very patient, and like being willing to take that on and driving stick in a dire situation through the fog. That does not sound fun, but you did it, and like yeah, you controlled that chariot. That was awesome, like taking control of your own destiny. I think we're going to end here with that story on Major Arcana card. And so, to review from the beginning, our cards were the Two of Swords, the Three of Cups, and the Chariot. And so, there's really a theme, taking all those together, there's really a theme of progression. And I think that's kind of like I think that's important for with everything that's going on in the world to kind of realize that this can also be a time of growth, that we can build things that last and build things that are important. And anytime you have three cards, there's a temptation to do well, there's a lot of temptations with threes, but it's like beginnings, middles, ends, past, present, future. There's a lot of traditional things, but I like to see them more as flowing one into the other. So we're starting with this Two of Swords and sort of maintaining that sense of balance in the world, and holding it for as long as it can before it breaks into one direction or another. And when it breaks, it's going into the Three of Cups, which is emotional progression and really being in touch with your emotions. And so I think that's an important thing with the self-quarantine and the current moment is being honest with what your emotions are, and giving yourself permission to feel what might be complicated feelings. And I think by maintaining balance and giving yourself permission to feel and feel our feelings, that ultimately speaks to the Chariot, and that is how we will take the wheel, like in Susie's story. Like it's intimidating. We're in a moment that is we're psychologically we're driving through the mountains in the fog, but I think it's not something that's beyond us. We're able to do it. We're equipped for it, and so that is the message: is to maintain balance where you can, try to grow. You know, like I said, one of the keynotes of the Chariot is you can catch the chariot or you can be run down by the chariot. And don't let the momentum of the world with the coronavirus run you down. Like we're gonna drive, we're not gonna be driven over. And so I think that's something to really keep in mind. And This has been the first edition of Carded Tarot Tales. I couldn't have asked for a better group of storytellers to kick things off with. I'm so excited to have shared the platform with everyone this evening. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and that is our show. Look for us returning on next Tuesday. I forget the actual date, but we'll be back Tuesday at 8 p.m. with a little bit longer show with 5 storytellers, and we look forward to having you back with us. Thank you so much.